Welcome to Two Haunted Books. My name is Janelle and this is a reading roundup. In my reading roundup videos, I talk about the books that I've been reading recently, and I have way more than I usually do, but there's a good reason for that. I don't know if you remember, but way back in July, for Jane Austen July, I did a deep dive into my library's catalog system to find out what they had for related to Jane Austen, and I discovered a couple of board books for little kids related to Jane Austen. They were primers, and so there was like a Pride and Prejudice one and maybe an Emma one. I can't remember now, but they were so adorable, and they were like a counting primer or something like that, and I thought they were so adorable. But I thought that it ended there, and I just moved on. And then I saw on Naomi's channel, from Naomi's Bookshelf, that Jennifer Adams, who wrote those books, has a whole series of board books connected to classic literature, and I fell in love. So I got a whole bunch of them from the library because I had to see them. So I'm going to show you what I got, what I read. Technically I read these, even though they're board books, and so I read them in like a minute. But I just love this idea of introducing classics to little ones. I think, like, if you're a parent who loves classics, then these are perfect because there's a lot of little details that an adult will pick up, and a little kid will just love being read to. So these are perfect. So I got the Anne of Green Gables one. These are by Jennifer Adams, and these are all illustrated by Alison Oliver. So there's a few things that I love about the format of these. They all have at the top the author of the original work. So this one is A Little Miss Montgomery. So this is Anne of Green Gables, A Places primer. I mean, so how perfect is that? Look, there's a little map of Prince Edward Island. I love it. And it just has the basics: sea, field, brook, wood. And then it has a quote here by Anne Shirley. I've always heard that Prince Edward Island was the prettiest place in the world. Here's Green Gables, the avenue. I mean, it's all the things. If you love Anne of Green Gables, you know what everything is referring to, and it's just fantastic, and I love the artwork in it. So I got this one, Anne of Green Gables. Anna Karenina, a fashion primer, Little Master Tolstoy. So again, fantastic. You know, so this first page, it says gown, and then there's even a fun activity in this one for little ones. Can you also find the fan? And then there's a quote by the picture from the book. And so yeah, these are just the best thing ever. Okay, here was one of my favorites. This is Wuthering Heights, Little Miss Bronte, a weather primer. I mean, come on. Here's a great quote at the beginning. Wuthering Heights is the name of Mr. Heathcliff's dwelling. Wuthering, this isn't a quote, this is just good information. Wuthering being a significant provincial adjective descriptive of the atmospheric tumult to which its station is exposed in stormy weather. Isn't that great? So we have breezy. The weather was sweet and warm. And so there's a quote on each page for each description. Sunny, cloudy, windy, a high wind blustered round the house and roared in the chimney. Stormy, rainy. I'm showing you all of this one because this one was one of my favorites. Misty, and snowy. Oh, one more. And still. I am such a huge fan of these primers by Jennifer Adams. Here is a Little Master Carol, Jaberwocky. This is a poem that I was not familiar with, but my husband has it almost memorized because his mom read it to him all the time when he was a kid. This is a nonsense primer, and this one is actually just a shortened version of the poem itself. So if you are familiar with the poem, then you can just read along. Here is Little Master Melville, Moby Dick. This is an ocean primer. Again, super, super fun. The Secret Garden, Little Miss Burnett. And this one was great because it just has a flower. And then on this page, a description. Crocuses burst into purple. Here's a daffodil. Let's see, there was Canterbury Bells. So yeah, The Secret Garden. This one was hilarious. Frankenstein, an anatomy primer. Little Miss Shelley. Here's Dr. Frankenstein. And then this is great. So here's the whole thing, but showing which part they're focusing on. So this is the head, and he's reading Paradise Lost, which is a great little detail. Let's see. Hands. So yeah, it's just so fun. Romeo and Juliet, Little Master Shakespeare. This is another counting primer. One balcony, two loves. Let's see. Four roses, and of course there's the quote, that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Five friends, Tybalt, Nurse, Friar Lawrence, Paris, and Mercutio. Oh, and then this one was delightful. This is A Christmas Carol, Little Master Dickens, a colors primer, a black hat, silver chains, gold stars, blue coat. I mean, it's just, yeah. Oh, another favorite of mine. This is Jane Eyre, Little Miss Bronte. This is another counting primer. One governess, two trunks, three candles, and then there's periodically quotes. It's always dangerous to keep a candle lit at night. I mean, how perfect is that? Four towers, five trees, six chalkboards, seven insects, eight drawings, nine pearls, and 10 books with the quote, "This book I had again and again perused with delight." All right, I'm almost done. A Midsummer Night's Dream, a fairies primer, Little Master Shakespeare. This one was so cute. It has that section from A Midsummer Night's Dream about the fairies. Through the house give gathering light by the dead and drowsy fire, every elf and fairy sprite. Hop as light as bird from briar, and this ditty after me, sing and dance it trippingly. So then there's continuing quotes from the play, and then showing the highlighted fairies. So we've got Puck and Titania and Oberon and Peace Blossom. Yeah. Okay, and then Dracula, Little Master Stoker, another counting primer, and this one had some hilarious little additions for grown-ups. Let's see if you know the story. So here, 5 heroes: Jonathan Harker, Dr. Seward, Quincy Morris, Arthur Homewood, and Dr. Van Helsing. 7 diaries and letters, and this is great, like Some Castle, Transylvania, to Peter Hawkins, Hawkins and Partners, Exeter, England. So just all of the various methods of communication. This one was hilarious with the rats. So this rat has a shirt that says, "I bat Transylvania." And this rat is reading a book called A Field Guide to Vampires. This one is, I think, my absolute favorite. 9 boxes. They're actually coffins, of course. And this one says, "Please do not disturb." And this one says, "Just say no." I just love her sense of humor. It's delightful. Little Master Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes in The Hound of the Baskervilles. This is a sounds primer. This was another favorite of mine. Again, for similar reasons. I just love this story, and then I just love how she knows the books from what she chooses to include. This one here, it says, keep away from the moors. And then this one here, Clocks Chime. This book is Birding on the Bog. Okay. And then finally, Treasure Island, Little Master Louis Stevenson. It's a Shapes primer. So yeah, this one is of course very piratey and delightful. Now, she also has an entire series based on Edgar Allan Poe, and it's about a little raven named Edgar, and it is the cutest thing. So here is Edgar and the Tattle-Tale Heart, inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. And seriously, Edgar the Raven is the cutest little thing I have ever seen. Just totally adorable. Look, here's a bust of Edgar Allan Poe. It's just so cute. And then here's another one. This one's bigger. This one is Edgar. Edgar gets ready for bed, inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And this one cracked me up. Once upon a midnight dreary. Edgar, finish your vegetables. Nevermore. I love it. I just love it so much. Okay. I first heard about Mr. Putter and Tabby from Mitzi at Mitzi Reads and Writes, and she talked about a number of these books, and they just looked so cute. These are children's books for children between 6 and 9, but I was fascinated with the idea that the main character is this elderly man and his cat, and so I wanted to get a couple books from the library to read them myself, to check them out, and she's right, like, they are just so cozy and sweet. Mr. Putter is hilarious, and his cat is so twitchy. So I got Mr. Putter and Tabby Hit the Slopes, which was great. He decides to go tobogganing with his cat, and he goes with his neighbor, which was just really fun. I really enjoy the illustrations in this series. I also really enjoy how much he likes birds. And then there was one particular picture here that I wanted to highlight. Look at that. Isn't that totally fun? There he is going with his friend to go tobogganing. So that is Mr. Putter and Tabby Hit the Slopes. I got one further one. Mr. Putty and Tabby Feed the Fish. These are written by, I should have said before, these are written by Cynthia Rylant and illustrated by Arthur Howard. And this one was cute as well. He decides to get a fish, but his cat just can't stop playing with it. And so again, just adorable. Look at these illustrations. And then my favorite one, though, of course, had nothing to do with the fish. But they decide to watch birds for a while, and I loved that because I'm quite the bird watcher myself. So yeah, it was fun. I'm not going to read any more. I don't tend to read a lot of children's books, but I just thought it was worth checking out, and they are a really cute series, and Mr. Putter is a really fun character. That's that. Let's get on to some books that I have read recently. Some of these are from a while ago now because I've been saving them up and I didn't talk about them during October because of Victober. So for October's Christie Fest, we read Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. This is a Hercule Poirot. Ariadne Oliver is in it, and a murder happens at a children's Halloween party, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm not going to talk about this, though, because I'm going to save it for when I talk about it in my Agatha Christie read-through project. This was one that she wrote in the 60s, so it's going to be a little while until I get to this one, but I enjoyed reading it, and I loved the discussion that we had on Discord about this with the Christie Fest group. Okay, and I read Murder Most Austen by Tracy Kiely. This is the last one in her series about Elizabeth Parker. And in this one, how fun. This one, she goes with her great aunt, I've just forgotten her name, her Aunt Winnie. They go to Bath for the Jane Austen conference. I mean, it was perfect. What a perfect way to end this series, to have them in Bath at a Jane Austen conference. There is someone who claims to be a Jane Austen scholar, but who is like trying to put forth his views that there's more to Jane Austen books than we might realize, that they were actually full of all kinds of seediness and nonsense. And so, of course, true Jane Austen fans like greatly dislike what he has to say. And of course, he gets killed at a ball. And it's just fun. It was just fun, and I love all the Jane Austen references in this series. I love that this one is set in Bath. It was the perfect way to end that series. I did a buddy read with Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, and we read Harlan Coben's The Woods, and this was really fun to read as a buddy read. One funny thing was it took me until at least halfway through this book before I thought, maybe I've read this before, and I went and I checked on Goodreads, and it turns out that I had, but like I did not remember anything, and I still did not remember the ending or a lot of the details of this one, but this is classic Harlan Coben. So our main character, Paul Copeland, is a county prosecutor, and 20 years ago, his sister, along with 3 other people, went into the woods at the camp that they were at, and nobody came out. 2 of them were found dead, but 2 of them, including his sister, were never found. And so he's always been like desperate to know what happened to his sister. Where is she? Why did they never find her body? And it was great. It was twisty and turny. I never really knew who I could trust. I even like had questions about Paul at times, even though he's the main character. I love that about Harlan Coben, that he makes me question everything and everybody, and that's what makes it such a fun read. There was a brief mention of Netflix in here, but it was the old school Netflix, because this was published in 2007. So this was back when Netflix actually mailed you DVDs. And so I love that. There's some people who aren't old enough to have been around for that, but I just think that is amazing that Netflix used to mail you DVDs. I just think that's great. So I really enjoyed this one. Didn't figure out the ending, and enjoyed my discussions with Alice about that one too. Okay, and I read the second one in the Dinner and a Murder mystery by Veronica Bond. This is Castle Deadly, Castle Deep. And I read this in October because it is set in the fall, and it was the perfect time of year to read it. It's set in the fall, it takes place in a castle, and the murder happens in the crypt. I mean, it's just perfect for this time of year, right? Nora Blake is our main character, and I really like her. She is 100% my kind of amateur sleuth. She's involved in the case because she's there when it happens, and so she is a witness, but she does not get in the way of the police. She does not try to actively investigate on her own, but she's still involved. She's naturally curious. She does talk to people, but she doesn't blunder around like other amateur sleuths do. Now, one thing I could have done without the relationship conflict in this story that drove me crazy, but there's enough other things that I really enjoyed that made up for that. I love the book love in this book. There are 2 libraries in the castle, and one is right next door to Nora's room, and she makes good use of it. And in this one, she's reading Mary Stuart's Madam Will You Talk? I love that. And I just, going back to Nora being an amateur sleuth, so even though she doesn't get in the way of the police, she is still kind of sleuthing. But she's very subtle about it. So here's a perfect example. Yeah, I marked this page because she's just talking to someone who works with her in the castle, and she's so subtle because she's getting information, but she's not like obviously questioning people. And so I just appreciate that she's a subtle amateur sleuth. The other thing that I found interesting, and it wasn't super annoying, but I noticed it, was the book felt like it had 3 endings. and I don't, you know, like it ended at the end of the chapter and I thought, okay, that's the end of the book. And then I turned the page and there was more. And so I kept reading, and at the end of the chapter I thought, oh, that's the end. And then I turned the page and there was more. So I kept reading. And so it kind of felt like 3 endings, or just a really prolonged ending maybe. But I did really enjoy it, and I love that there's a map of the castle at the beginning. So this is a series, cozy mystery series that I do really enjoy. Okay, I read the second in the Harith Athria series by R.V. Raman. This is A Dire Isle. This is set in modern day India, and I really enjoyed this one. This one had connections to archaeology. It was a good time of year to read this one as well, because there was also kind of ghosty paranormal vibes a little bit. There's a legend of what happened on this islet that is right by where the archaeologists are working, and everybody in the area is scared to go to that island. And so, you know, that was perfect atmosphere-wise. Athria is asked to investigate some goings on with the archaeologists, and then of course one of them turns up dead. And I just really enjoy this series. I really enjoy the style of writing. It feels golden age. Even though it's modern day, it feels like golden age writing, partly because it has stuff like this in the story. This is a map of the house where the archaeologists are staying for the dig. And so yeah, I love that. And here's another map of the area, including the islet. So yeah, this is a great series. So if you like golden age style modern mysteries, then I would recommend you check out this series. Okay, and I did a buddy read with Carolyn from Carolyn's Reading Ramblings of Dream of Orchids by Phyllis A. Whitney. This is the first Phyllis A. Whitney book that I've ever read, and for that it was really fun. I've enjoyed talking about it with Carolyn. But as I was reading it, and I know she's very prolific. She writes romantic suspense. This book was written in 1985. And I just remember, like, I'm reading it and I'm thinking, this is just okay. Things are fairly obvious. I did figure everything out. And so then I was thinking, like, what's the attraction here? Like, because I know she was a super popular author. So I looked it up, and she was 82 when she wrote this book. So then that completely changed my mindset, and I just gave her way more grace, and I thought, I need to go back and read some from her golden age. So I need to read some of the books that she wrote in the 50s and 60s to really get a true understanding of what she was like as an author. Because I can see, you know, the potential in this. It was just a tad, I think it was just a tad obvious. And the other thing that I didn't really like is that I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like any of the characters in here. So one thing when I was doing research about Phyllis Whitney, I discovered that she lived to be 105 years old. And so I was having a discussion with Erin about this because seriously, what did this woman see in her lifetime? She was born in 1903 and she died in 2008. What did she see in her lifetime? I mean, they were still driving horses and carriages when she was born, and there were 2 world wars and the Spanish influenza, and we went to the moon, and we invented computers and the internet. Like, can you even imagine what it would have been like for her, the things that she saw in her lifetime? I just wanted to show you what I discovered when I took the dust jacket off of this book, because I just thought it was really pretty. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? A little orchid there. All right, so that is Dream of Orchids. Okay, when I did my deep diving into the board books by Jennifer Adams, I discovered one that she wrote for adults called Y is for Yorick. I got it as an ebook from my library, so I'm going to put the picture up here. This is a slightly irreverent Shakespearean ABC book for grown-ups, and I loved it. It was so fantastic. So just a couple of things. First of all, she started with an introduction that she called Why Shakespeare Still Reigns, and I thought that it was really good. And she talks about the plays of Shakespeare and why we still like him. And then she just goes through the alphabet. So B is for example, Beatrice and Benedict. Beatrice and Benedict were a couple of Italians who were constantly fighting and insulting each other. Eventually they decided they were in love. Much ado about nothing. And then there is, I hope that you can see that. There is an illustration. And I just love that. B is also for Bottom. Bottom was a self-important working class man that, like many people, went around among friends and colleagues not realizing he was an ass. A Midsummer Night's Dream. And so yeah, I just love, like, she's slightly irreverent and yeah, just delightful. There was one further, oh here it is. D is also for Dennis. Dennis was a very minor character who no one remembers. As you like it. All right, and then it ended with, she did summaries of all the plays, which I found very helpful. So I really did enjoy reading Y is for Yorick. Okay, and then a couple more seasonal things to end this reading roundup. I read A Lesson in Dying by Anne Cleeves, and the reason why I read this when I did was because it is set at Halloween, and so I read it around Halloween, and that was just really fun. This one is a series that I never hear anyone talk about. Anne Cleeves is popular, of course, for her Vera Stanhope series and her Jimmy Perez series, but this is the first in a series that she wrote in 1990. I looked it up, and the series is called the Inspector Ramsay series. There are 6 books in that series. This is the first one, like I said. But what I found interesting about it is that it felt like it was a combination of a professional detective and an amateur sleuth, because we did get Inspector Ramsay with his investigations, but we got, especially at the beginning, we got more of the amateur sleuthing of Jack Robson, because someone that he really cared about was accused of the crime, and so he really delved into. I really did enjoy this, and I want to keep reading with the series. And so the headmaster of the school is hanged in the playground on the night of the Halloween party, and then everything goes from there. It's set in Northumberland, which I really enjoyed. And so yeah, this is the kind of like way back list for Anne Cleves, but I never hear anybody talking about this series. If you've read this series or some of the early works of Anne Cleves, let's chat in the comment section down below because I'm really curious. And then last but not least, on Halloween night, I listened to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, and it was narrated by Anthony Heald, Heald, and that was just a delight. Anthony Heald is a fantastic narrator. He was so good, and so it was just great. It was dark outside, and I listened to it while I was, you know, in between when the children came for their candy, and so it was just the perfect night to listen to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and that was just delightful. So there you have it. That is what I have been reading recently. Let's chat in the comment section down below. What do you think of these primers by Jennifer Adams? If you are a fan of classics, do you like them? What do you think? And have you read any of these other books that I mentioned? I would love to chat with you in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon.